Are there clues in the Bible about the identity of who was here in Florida in the old antiquity? Well, today I'm going to share some information with you. This is going to be part 2, where I talk about city place names in Florida, how my theory that Florida in the southeast portion of the United States is part of the lost city of Atlantis and was and also a civilization of the Iberian, ancient Iberian people and antiquity. So this morning I started out, and for some reason I felt like I needed to look at Daniel, because as I've been reading the Urantia book, Book of Truth, there's parts in there that talk about they talk about how Archangel Michael has incarnated to flesh form, and that there was an order that was set up called the Melchizedek Macaventa. And these were a order of 12 people, like disciples, right? An order of 12, and this order of 12 were like administrators here on Earth, or as they called it, Urantia, right? So we had this order of 12, and as I'm reading about this, it starts talking about different figures that are in the Bible. It talks about Abraham, it talks about Jesus, it talks about this big betrayal with Lucifer, but Lucifer wasn't alone. Lucifer wasn't alone because he had help, and it was another order that worked in earthly incarnates and groups, and this group was called the Caligastia, or Caligasta. Maybe that's where you get Caligula, the Roman guy, right? Because they stole all these names. They made it so confusing because everybody changed their name and they didn't go by their real names, and everybody was Antonius, and everybody else was, Piscius, and this and this and this and that. But anyway, we had the second order, which the betrayal group came into in the Urantia. So I started looking at some of these people in the biblical context. And so I was looking at Daniel, and I wanted to read Daniel 9. And it says, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by the book the number of the years whereof the word of Jehovah came to Jeremiah the prophet for the accomplishing of the desolations of Jerusalem, even 70 years. Now, it clearly says, and this is the Holy Bible of this is my father-in-law's Bible, and he passed away in his 90s 2 years ago, and he was devout Jehovah's Witness. So this is everything Jehovah. Everything is in here refers to Jehovah. But it says here, Jerusalem. Okay, so this brings me to the next part of Jerusalem. Okay, so you have Jerusalem, right? Okay, well, there's Salem in that. Well, did you know that Jerusalem used to be called Salem? It was. Also, in my Florida Place Names book, I love this book. It's so informative. If you look up Salem, you do have a Salem. You have a Salem in Taylor County. And let me just tell you the history of the name of Salem. Settlers here became numerous enough to justify a post office in 1878. Okay? Jerusalem was called the City of Salem, or the City of Peace. Okay. Well, isn't that a coincidence, right? a coincidence that they called it Jerusalem too. Okay, well then, that leads me to this next section. The Sage of Salem. Okay, so it talks about this order, this Immaculata incarnation of these 12 beings that were here to facilitate the Word of God. Okay, and they refer to our divine creator as El Elyon. El Elyon, the Most High. So this is where they got the El from the Hebrew, got the El, Elohim. All right. So it says it was 1973 years before the birth of Jesus that Immaculata was bestowed upon the human races of Urantia. So Immaculata is another word for Michael, the archangel. Okay, so when I say Immaculata, it means Michael. Michael's being born in the flesh. Okay, so when Immaculata was bestowed upon the human races, his coming was unspectacular. So he was just going to be born like a man, kind of like Hermes, kind of like Jesus. You're supposed to just be born like a normal guy. Okay, so when he came almost 2,000 years before the birth of Jesus. Okay, so the funny thing is that when you add up this time, and it becomes 4,000 years ago, and then what I talked about yesterday about that genetic change in the Irish mythology studies that they've been doing at the College of William and Mary, where they talked about that this genetic change in Irish mythology, where their phenomelanin, their chromosome 2 was changed. They had an upgrade of some type that was introduced by one ancestor 4,000 years ago. Now tell me that's not a funny synchronicity, right? Because nothing's coincidental anymore. It's just synchronicities at this point. Okay, so it says here, his coming was unspectacular, but his materialization was not witnessed by human eyes. He was first observed by mortal man on the eventful day when he entered the tent of Amdon, the Chaldean herder of the Sumerian extraction. So Amdon, I've talked about Van and Amdon, how they started this Garden of Eden. They left the Garden of Eden and they started the land of Nod. So that's Amdon. Okay, a Chaldean herder of the Sumerian extraction. So they're saying right now that these Sumerian people, they were Nodites. So we're getting right back to the Sumerian tablets, right? We're going right back to this. All this leads back to the same thing, basically, is that Jerusalem, all these people, this all goes back to Samaria, ancient people. These were all ancient people. These people were old bloodlines. Okay. And they were the upgrade from Adam and Eve, from the Maccabeans. Okay. When the herder had recovered from his astonishment, he had a million questions, and then this was the first time that Michael had eaten, and then he lived to be almost 100 years old, 94 years old, but he didn't have any offspring. It says that he had no offspring because he was celestial, I guess, in nature. So he had no offspring 4,000 years ago. But the interesting thing is that when they talk about when he was here and when he incarnated here, that his symbol was 3 intertwined rings, like the Olympic symbol today. That was his symbol, and that it meant basically like body, mind, and spirit all intertwined, like the Holy Trinity in the circles, because of course we know the circle means infinity, and those things go on forever. So his symbol has still lasted today. It's been out through the Olympic Games. You see it in all kind of logos. You'll see intertwined rings. It's funny. It's funny how things live on. So it says that in his physical appearance, that Melchizedek resembled the then blended Nodites from the land of Nod and the Sumerian people, being almost 6 feet in height and possessing a commanding presence. He spoke Chaldean, half other dozen languages, and he dressed like the Canaanite priest. except he wore the 3 circles on his chest. And that comes from a planet called Satania. Satania, okay? So, you know how they say Satan and all that, Satania? Well, when Lucifer came, he was supposed to be doing good work here. He was supposed to be doing good work here. But he got tempted and he fell. And then he cut us off from the celestial realm. And so this is why we have this Melchizedek teachings that go down to this Macaventa. And then this order leads down into the other part of this. I mean, I could talk a lot about this. It says Melchizedek taught at some future time another son of God would come in the flesh as he had come, but he would be born of a woman. This is why numerous later teachers held that Jesus was a priest or minister, that he was perpetuating the same order of Michael, the archangel. And then, so that's interesting that the person that's going to come back as the next Maccabean is going to be a woman. But the interesting thing is that it's pretty much a basics of the religion that we have today. You have 7 commandments, which are pretty much just like the 10 commandments. And that the only thing that they required of you was that you believed in God. That you believed that the most divine was El Elyon. And you didn't have to be perfect. But they didn't want you partaking in any sacrifices or burnt offerings. No more of that. Because those gods that those burnt offerings are appealing to are lower realm gods that for divination. They're using them for divination and for granting favors in exchange for being chained to the earth. Your soul can never go to heaven. See, this is what they say. They sold their soul. This means that they're repetitiously stuck here in a loop of karma. They're never going to be able to go back to source. Yeah, that's a very heartbreaking thing. Because no matter what you do, you've lost your creator. You've lost your connection. You severed yourself. You joined with the Luciferian movement. And it's quite sad because they always seem like they realize too late that, you know, it's not all that it's cracked up to be. So, accordingly, he wisely offered people the substitute of sacrament of bread and wine for the older sacrifice of flesh and blood. And didn't Jesus, he preached the same thing. Take of my body and the bread and the wine, and no more sacrifices. No more killing animals. No more burning animals to appease these midway souls that have fallen from grace, right? These midway souls that were born, originally Adam and Eve, or even before that. It might have been in this first grouping of these Melchizedek, but there were entities that were born without a physical form, but they were still a spirit and a soul. And so they called them midways. And your guardian angel is called an adjuster, just like an insurance company. But what they were teaching was called the Salem doctrines of okay? And so you might be saying, okay, well, what is the Salem doctrines of Well, the Salem doctrines of are the Salem doctrines in Iran. Yes, we're finally getting around to it after 14 minutes, but I felt like you needed the groundwork, okay? I'm going to read it. From Palestine, some of the Melchizedek missionaries passed on through Mesopotamia to the great Iranian plateau. For more than 500 years, the Salem teachers made headway in Iran, and the whole nation was swinging to the Melchizedek religion when a change of rulers precipitated a bitter persecution which practically ended the monotheistic teachings of the Salem cult. Now, Salem, remember, is Jerusalem, early Jerusalem. The doctrine of the Abrahamic covenant was virtually extinct in Persia when, in that great century of moral renaissance, the 6th before Christ, Zoroaster appeared to revive the smoldering embers of the Salem gospel Did you hear that? Zoroaster? Did I just hear Zoroastrianism? Zoroastrianism? Yes, that would be. And guess who these Zoroastrian Iranian people were? Well, they would be the Median dynasty, the Median kings, the Mirian kings. And it was the group that went to Iberia, right? This Mithra group, they believed in the Mithras at the time, because after this whole upheaval happened and all of these people lost their religions, they had this Zoroastrianism going on, Iraniastrianism, however you want to call it, Zoroastrianism. There's so many words, so many long words with a bunch of N's and I's and A's and hard things to pronounce. Well, this religion started falling by the wayside because you had all of these groups that were invading this area, because these people were really rich. These people had a lot of resources because this Mesopotamian area was a trading hub. And the other thing that I thought was interesting was that when I was talking about our place cities and Jerusalem, you also get into New Smyrna. And New Smyrna is just reformation of the same thing about these cities that are place names that are here. New Smyrna, there was a Smyrna that meant myrrh, which meant bitter, and that was in the Mesopotamia area. And so you have New Smyrna in Florida, which is the New Smyrna. Well, guess what? That's right by St. Augustine. That's right by this area that the Catholic Spanish king said was sacred. It was a sacred spot. And that's why they were fighting the French in the 14 and 1500s over the coast of Florida, because they all wanted here. They were here for the money. There was a lot of gold, silver, salt. The Celts mined salt. Salt was one of the #1 commodities in antiquity. And so special salt from estuaries. And see, we've talked about estuaries. I've talked about estuaries and how estuaries are going to be the place where you find absolutely the most evidence of these very, very old occupations. And the reason I say that is because estuaries, they say that that creation began when the salt water and the fresh water combined. And there's a reason for that, because in an estuary where salt is mined, that the clay silt that will settle there, that makes Celtic sea salt the color that it is, that dirty color, that's adding like 80 or 90 trace minerals, okay? So basically, the Celts were mining vitamins. Yes, they knew about the vitamins. They knew that they could not live without that magnesium and those trace minerals, because their body had been modified. Their genetic structure was different for their phenomelanin. Their body doesn't absorb protein the same way, and they do not absorb magnesium as much. So we had all of these people from Iberia that were here. They were mining salt. This place was set up with the Gulf of Mexico, looked just like the Mediterranean, the Aegean Sea. Perfect setup, a duplicate. And the other thing is that we had orange groves here before the Spanish came to explore and discover us. So they said that there were already orange groves here. But you know, in the 1400s to 1500s, they didn't even have a name for an orange. They didn't even know that color. So they they didn't have a name for that fruit. That's why they called it the golden apple. They called it the golden apple because they didn't have a word for orange. And, you know, it's amazing some of the little things that you come across, little breadcrumbs that you come across and you think, oh, that's interesting. So if they did not have a name for an orange until the mid-1500s and they were calling them golden apples, so that gives us some kind of window right there, right? The golden apples. So we're talking about before like 1450s. They're calling them golden apples. So these groves here had to have been, these orange groves here had to have been from before the 1400s. I think they're hundreds and hundreds of years old, truthfully. I truthfully do. I think that they were planted by people of Atlantis because, and when the Iberian people, because these same oranges, these Valencia oranges in Hamlin, we had Hamlin, Valencia, and Navel. Those were three of the original varieties of oranges that were planted in Florida. And Valencia is a city in Spain. And I'm sure, and then we also have, what do we have, like the navel of the world somewhere? I don't know. That's interesting. But back to it. So back to it. We had this line of succession of King of Medes, like it was talked about in Daniel. And it talks about these kings of Medes, these seed of Medes, as being like the avengers on the people that have failed with the covenant with God. And so it's not surprising that that history would want to wipe these people out, right? If you were in charge, would you want these people out here spouting their nonsense? No, you'd want to censor them, right? That's why everything that has to do with this culture has been destroyed. There's only one place that you can find evidence of that from the Achaemenid Empire, and that's on top of a mountain. And there was, it was called there's a professor named Mirian that talks about, he wrote like 15 books. He's a instructor, he's a professor at one of these colleges. And he wrote a whole catalog of books on this Median Empire, but you can't get a hold of them. They're not for people like us to read. They're not for people like us to read. But this line of kings come from Darius the Great. Okay? And then it comes down into these ethnic Assyrian, Median kings, also known as the Catholic Iraqis. Give me that one again, right? The Catholic Iraqis. Well, that's because you have this Catholic group that even today, they're a sect of the Spanish Catholic Church that teach this Machiavellian faith. And it's about, you know, not everybody's perfect, but you got to try to do the best you can every day and always know that you're here in the name of God. Right? And you need to do all things and honor him. It basically that's what that faith talks about. And then, you know, being part of your community. But of course, with every faith, somebody from the inside that's nefarious hijacks those and soils them, right? Is it intentional? Of course it is. It's intentional. Who would want to end this whole shindig that some of these people got going on, right? This is just internal fun for them. And and the rest of us, we just have to come along for the ride. But we're finding out where we came from, and I think that we've got a group of kings that became Christians, and this was by Saint Nino, and you can read all about Saint Nino. And she came from this family of this king's list that go back to these ancient times, these Iranian, Parthenogenian people. But Saint Nino, she came from Armenia, and she was one of these Melchizedek Catholics. Well, they spoke a Proto-Indo-Iranian language, and she was traveling. She went to Jerusalem. They say that she had ties with Jerusalem because, remember, it used to be called Salem, and it was Jerusalem. And they were teaching these teachings here, the Salem doctrines. They were teaching them in Iran. And so Nino, she went to Iberia. She went to Iberia, and she had healed the queen. The queen was sick. And the queen had heard that this Nino was, she was from this group and that she could heal people. And so she went to see Nino, and Nino healed her. And when she went back and told her husband about it, he was so impressed. He was impressed, and he had his eyes hurt in he was in some kind of war, and she was able to heal his eyes. So when that happened, he was convinced that, there was powers outside of his own self. So he converted to become a Christian. And, at that time in Spain, it was be a Catholic or get out. And so they got out. They got out. Where did they go? Well, my friends, they came here. They came here. They were here. They were definitely in St. Petersburg, because their pictures are all over a skyscraper downtown. There's depictions of all of these kings' faces, and they're all lined up all along the edge of the building. And I have a shorts on it on my page. And when I seen that, man, my head just exploded out the top, because I realized, oh my gosh, these are the people that have basically been scrubbed from history. That these truly are these kings and queens that were doing the work of God. They were doing God's work. They were doing the work of the Mother of Souls, Sophia, and the universal Son, the Christ. And if we're going to get into that, that's a whole nother subject of the vagal nerve and the glands, and how we've got the Christ and the Sophia, the soul. But they believed that your soul was your personality, and that you developed your soul by developing your creativity, like your skills of art, your skills of nature, your skills of building, science, astronomy, everything. Nutrition, health, love, kindness, community. I mean, it was totally a learning experience of developing your creativity, developing your soul, so you could go back and share. And all of these things merged with God. This creative force merged back into God. So, I mean, I think that's pretty cool. And this religion that they're talking about, that Michael talks about it. They talk about Michael saying before the Salem doctrines, is that they had the Zoroastrianism. But basically, I think this is really kind of how I think about things, because you talk about basically, like, goes into the Vedic things and the Buddha. I mean, you've got darkness and light, and you have to maintain a balance. That balance is the way to perfection. That moderation is perfection. That we come here, and that our goal here is we come here with no memory to see if our soul is mature enough and developed enough to resist the temptations of the flesh, which is our vagal nerve system. Can we resist those temptations, right? The pleasure principle? Can we resist it? Can we use moderation? Can we instead channel our attention, our focus on out to other things that are creative outlet, that grows our soul, that we can go back to God, right? So no wonder that everything was so beautiful. No wonder the buildings were so beautiful. All of their activities were rich, with creativity. They had theater and singing and music and travel, and they had fairs, world fairs, and exhibits and exhibitions and plays and church and healing and everything. And it was all like in the buildings and combined in the architecture and in the minerals. And I mean, what a time. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I would never want to take that from my history. We got to find this stuff, guys. All this stuff was here. It's all hidden in plain sight. If you go down to Daytona Beach and you go to the beach, if you just go to the beach, you look around everywhere, it talks about Atlantis. Everything there is Atlantic, because it just changed the last letter, but it was Atlantis. Come on. Daytona Beach is up by St. Augustine. And Volusia County is all up in that area, in the most sacred spot to the Spanish, to the church, to the Pope, right? That's a sacred place. So, I mean, there was something sacred here. It was definitely Hesperides, and it was the orchard of the golden apple. And we could go right back to Washington Oaks Garden by St. Augustine, right? Just right by St. Augustine. First city. Fossilized Naga head in Washington Oaks Gardens. And there's an old mask in there. It shows Mayan culture. So, I mean, it just goes to show you that the Mayans were here. The Mayans were in Florida. The Floridians were in South America. It looks exactly like the heads that you see in Belize. I saw also some heads at the Mayan ruins in Belize. I went and seen the Temple of the Sun God. And see, that was the other thing. It was sun worship. That was one of the things that it was. It was the Mithras. So, anyway, so what do you think? So do you think that this Zoroastrianism is the key? This Machiavellian and this Christian people, they all came over here from Iberia, and all this stuff's hidden in the architecture? I think it's a possibility. And next I'm going to show you how the Zoroastrianism and these different doctrines, the Salem doctrines and how there is proof here in our architecture. And the first place I'm going to show you is St. Anne's Shrine. So we're going to come back with part 3. So thanks for spending 31 minutes with me. And I hope this was informative. I'd love to hear what you have to think, what you have to say, and what you think about this. Because I do feel like all of these things are tying in together. The Urantia books, the Bible, our history, all of these places that are in Florida and Alabama and Louisiana and Georgia, they're all indicative of the civilization. We have these place names and these cities. All of these have these Iberian, Greek, Roman, Spanish influences on them. There were treasures here. The Spanish came here with De Leon, Christopher Columbus, De Soto. They were all here because they knew these people brought massive amounts of wealth when they left their country and when they came here. And Spain, see, the Spanish king thought he had a right to it because these people originally came from his country. But, you know, he was just on a technicality. He was here on a technicality. Basically, getting everybody on technicalities. Let's kick everybody out. So anyway, that's it for it. So I'd love to hear what you have to say. I'm going to come back on the next one, and we're going to talk more about the Zoroastrianism and how the symbolisms and the gods and the different things in this religion and in the Salem doctrines, the proof that we have on these buildings. And we're going to prove it. We're going to prove it for sure. And it's here. So thanks. When you look for me, I'll be here because we're living the past, present, and the future all at the same time. So don't forget to go outside and put your feet in the grass. Put your intentions out there in the universe today. Say, this is going to be a beautiful day. So I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching Sacred Enzyme. Bye-bye.